Yeah.
Okay, that's this.
Somewhere. There's a keypad. But it is much sharper than and so yeah, the system is getting better and better. Yeah, we checked it. It's working today. What? Y'all think I'm constitutional?
Yes.
Well, I know what happens to me. I don't know what happens to you. Match shoes today. Different things. That's okay. Somebody would know.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully, Mr. Goodwin will be here shortly. This is the October 3rd, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Zoning. Present are Allison Grass, Howell Morrison, myself, John Bennett, Chaplain McKay. Mr. Goodwin will be here shortly. From the zoning staff, Lee Batchelder, Henry Ashby, and Emma McQuarrie. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The Board of Zoning Appeals usually, but not always, approves uncontested applicants. For all applications, the board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we will hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Zoning has the authority to do three things: hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator, grant special exceptions, fact-finding function of the board, and grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. We do not have any deferrals this evening, so all the items on the agenda will be heard. However, with a lack of a quorum for Mr. Goodwin, we will defer item A1, review of the minutes from the September 19th meeting until he has arrived. So the next item on the agenda is item A2, 68.5 Lee Street and 190 Nassau Street, East Side Neighborhood. TMS number 459-05-01-086 and 058, zone DR2. For 68.5 Lee Street, request a variance from section 54-301 to allow a reduction in lot size from 1,911 square feet to 1,555 square feet and allow a two-story building with a 54% lot occupancy, 35% limit. Existing lot occupancy is 44%. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow a vertical extension, second story, to a non-conforming building footprint having a 1 foot 5 inch south side setback, 7 feet required. Request a use variance from section 54-203 to allow retail use in a DR2 diverse residential zone district. Request a variance from section 54-317 to allow 3,142 square feet of retail space with 2 off-street parking spaces, 4 spaces required. For 190 Nassau Street, request a variance from section 54-301 to allow the establishment of 2 dwelling units, 2 detached single-family residences with 1,674.5 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit, 2,000 square feet required. Owner is Nassau Lee Holdings LLC. Applicant is B Studio Architecture, Chris Bonner. Mr. Batchelder.
This is 2 adjacent lots that we're talking about tonight. And 68.5 Lee Street is on the corner of Lee and Nassau Street. And 190 Nassau is the property immediately north. See on this zoning map, both of these properties are zone DR2, which is a residential zoning district. 68.5 Lee Street actually has 2 buildings on it right now. One is a small house, and the other is a corner 1-story building that was once a commercial use, although it's been vacant for quite a long time. And then 190 Nassau has a single family residence on it. So the proposal is to do some reconfiguration of buildings and demolish the corner building. It's a cinder block building, and that approval has been granted. And then reconfigure the property lines and build a new single family residence behind the existing house at 190. So these are images of the existing conditions. You see the 1-story corner commercial building right here. And that's 68.5 Lee Street that is outlined. And then this is 190 Nassau Street. The applicant filed their paperwork and their variance test, special exception request. Survey of the existing conditions. These are photographs that really help to illustrate the existing conditions. So you see this 1-story corner building and what kind of condition it's in. It's been this kind of condition for a long time. The house at 190 Nassau Street is also in poor condition, not occupied. These X signs on them mean that the fire marshals have posted a sign on the building that says it cannot be occupied. and and is a hazard. And then you see in this image, the house, the small house at 68.5 Lee Street. Both of those residences are 1 story, and this building, like 190 Nassau, has a red X on it. So also a house that's in very poor condition. The new owner of the property just recently purchased it, would like to bring this property back to life. And I think from letters that we've seen, including a letter from the owners of this house at 68 Lee Street, which is occupied, has been occupied. They are supportive of this property being fixed up, because these houses, where they are in that little building right there, are basically a nuisance in their current situation. So this reflects the existing conditions. 3 parking spaces, 1 by each building. And you see the building footprints. This, the top image, is another view of those existing conditions. In the bottom image, that is the proposed change that they would like to make. So 190 Nassau Street, they would propose to remove the rear portion of that house. That will be a BAR review. And typically these Freedman cottages were very small. And then over the years, people would build additions onto the back. Those additions typically would be of very poor quality and deteriorate faster than the existing house. And so I don't know if that's a condition here, but the BAR will be able to review that aspect of this plan. But with the demolition of that addition to the historic home 190 Nassau, they would then create more space on the back of the lot to build a second residential unit. And the parking for those units, 2 spaces would be provided, and you'll see this on subsequent plans. But 2 spaces would be provided for the existing house in this location. And then 2 spaces for the new house would be provided in this area right here. The property line between those 2 properties would be reconfigured to follow this red line here. And by doing that, they're allowing the parking for 190 Nassau that I just mentioned. And then also they would allow 2 parking spaces for the corner store building, the new corner store building. And the other thing about this is that the existing house at 68.5 Lee Street was denied for demolition by the BAR. So what they're proposing to do, and again, this is something else that the BAR will have to look at, try to get an answer, and they're busy, and I understand that, and they don't have all the details. So I never got an answer from the staff, but they will have to, the applicants will have to go through that process and find out if the BAR demolition review would kick in for the proposed relocation of that house. But what they would like to do is incorporate that existing house into the second floor of this building, this new building here on the corner.
Can you explain that one more time?
So right now, there's this house up here, and they cannot demolish that house. What they would like to do is relocate it in and incorporate it into this new building that sits on the corner. And so here's more detail of what they're proposing, and you can see, I know this is a complicated drawing to try and read, but these are parking spaces, these X's. So there's 4 parking spaces accessed off of Lee Street and the 2 off of Nassau. And then this illustrates the proposed plan for the property. Actually, this does not. That's the existing condition. This illustrates the proposed plan for the property. So new building on the corner that incorporates the existing house, 68.5 Lee. Historic home here. It's restored. A new house in the back here. And the applicants had been on the agenda, I think it was August 5th, maybe early August.
Yeah.
They've been on the agenda for the August 5th, early August meeting. And they deferred that because the neighborhood association for the east side felt like they needed more time and wanted more meetings with the applicant. So the applicants willingly did that and had more meetings with those residents. And then a few days ago, well, I guess a week and a half ago or so, 2 weeks ago, we got this letter from Ms. Grant, the president of the Eastside Community Development Corporation, indicating that they still had concerns with this proposal due to a lack of meeting all the parking requirements. And so he indicates in the letter that they would not be willing to support this application at that time. So I don't know if there have been any subsequent conversations about this, but that was the position that they took. There are a series of letters, I know in your public comment packet that went out, comments. And some neighbors, nearby neighbors, including the neighbors at, well, the neighbors at 68 Lee Street. I saw a letter there. And from those folks indicating that they support this, I can't. Not sure I know exactly where it is, but anyway, I saw a letter from them. So there's support from neighbors in the immediate area. And the lack, oh, I'm sorry, okay. This one? Oh, yeah. The Lucases at 68 Lee Street wrote a letter which they speak in support for this application. So anyway, I know that there's support from some of the nearby neighbors. The issue with the lack of parking can be a concern whenever there's the requirements are being met in the area in which the property is located has an issue with that. However, in that case, I think the lack of parking really, it's only 2 spaces, so it's a minimal number. And it's for a proposed retail use, which is what that corner building would have. This would be a retail use in this building. And thing about commercial uses like that, unless it's a restaurant, but a commercial use like is being proposed here, an office, something like that, they require parking during the weekdays, typically not so much on the weekends or in the evenings. And so I think those uses work well in residential areas where you have parking issues. And for that reason, I'm supportive of this application. Also, of course, the Preservation Society has concerns about the changes to the property. I think, again, the BAR staff will need to review the proposed changes, and there may be a board review that is necessary, at least for 190 Nassau Street, given the demolition of the rear portion of that house. But I've seen those approvals granted in the past. So I feel like this has a chance to be successful through that process. So my recommendation is for approval of the request. And I would just mention that there's no plan. I know there's no plan from the applicant to put parking on the ground level of the new building on the corner. And it's a two-story building and certainly could have that, but I know that they're not planning to do that. We would not want that because that's not an attractive way of developing in a historic neighborhood. So, and also there's no residential unit that's proposed for that building, that corner building either. And of course, that would not be allowed. They didn't apply for a residential unit there. So it's strictly a commercial use in that corner building, not a restaurant or bar or anything like that. It's strictly retail or office. And so my recommendation is for approval.
City's recommendation is for approval. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Is the applicant present? You wish to have some comments or add any, maybe some questions from the board?
Sure, happy to answer. Everyone have questions or want to make it like a?
If you don't mind, actually, maybe you could address the incorporation of the Lee Street property to the corner. Could I?
Maybe you could swear everybody in.
Yes, of course.
Get going with the public comment.
Thank you. Lee has reminded me kindly that we do need to swear anybody in who wishes to speak tonight. If you intend to speak tonight, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You will signify by saying I do. Thank you. Thank you, Lee.
Chris Bonner with BZA-Z Architecture, the applicant. I guess specifically to the questions about the corner building. Yes, the hope is to obviously preserve the small residential structure. And I know it's kind of hard to read there, but I want to obviously also make sure the board realize that these are really small structures. So that the existing small kind of cottage isn't much more than 400 square feet, which is the size of a hotel. So these are really small. So we're essentially going to lift it up, build underneath it, set it back down. There's an example on Cooper Street where a historic home, a very small historic portion of the house, was also lifted and kind of built underneath it. That's the hope, so that we can preserve as much of the actual structure as we can.
You're referring to
The
the
corner building,
corner building.
that was the question, correct?
Yes, it was. But shifting it over towards the corner.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll move about 15 feet. And the really hope of this, this whole reconfiguration is to kind of bring back this lot to as functional as possible. So we are maintaining the same lot coverage. I know there's a lot of things on that list we're asking for that because of the funkiness and the size of the lots we have to ask for, but we are maintaining the same lot coverage of the existing structures. We're just reconfiguring them. We are maintaining the same kind of historic uses. So it's actually Lee's Candy Store in the corner. You know, we'll maintain a commercial on the corner, and there'll be 2 residential units on the corner or on the adjacent property. So it historically had 2 residential uses and 1 commercial. We're putting this back just in a different configuration. And then finally, we understand that there is an issue in the neighborhood and concern about parking, and we're doing our best. We're doubling the parking of what's possible right now. So we're really trying to kind of listen to the neighborhood that what the concerns is and address it. But there is obviously a physical limitation of what can we give away, not to give away, but what can we dedicate to parking in the car versus the city versus the neighborhood versus the people that live there. And so that's obviously a tough balance when you have such small lots. And speaking of small lots, you notice some of those other things we're requesting is because these lots are actually already below the minimum for this district. So every time we change anything, someone's going to come and ask you for permission because the existing lot is already too small. So it's just it just starts to compound.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner.
If you could go back to the current state of the lot. So the second building is gonna be a part of the corner building, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And so you're saying you're gonna take the second building, lift it, and just slide it over to the back of the corner building?
Yeah, it'll build, do the second, the whole second story will be that building kind of sitting up there. And I said, there are examples, there's a house on Cooper Street where they did a similar thing, so it's not, well, I'm not the only one who's ever done that in the city. There are examples around nearby in the neighborhood. Cooper Street's about 2 blocks away.
Did you have alternative designs to address the concerns with the parking and then the Preservation Society's concerns?
Sure. From a parking standpoint, most of the other looks at the property actually had less parking. You know, the city standard, obviously, for parking is 9 feet wide, 19 feet long. And that ability or that hope to add additional parking spaces is what kind of led, I think, to the one drawing you showed with the red line, that very strange new property line. It's really about fitting cars everywhere we can. Which, you know, obviously, we don't want to necessarily dedicate our entire city to parking. And, you know, from the size of the lot, there's no ability to have a parking lot. So the only way we can do it is actually to have, you know, driveways.
You spoke about the denial of 68.5 Lee for demo. And that is, could you direct me to exactly which building was
That's-
denied?
This building is labeled Building 2. Is 68.5 Lee Street, the residential building that was denied.
In July?
I'm not sure, when did that go through the BAR? See, it was July. July.
And so you're not gonna demo it, you now are going to move it over, and incorporate it into the new building.
But that also has to go before BAR, and it hasn't yet.
Correct. For sure. We had difficulty getting a straight answer from the city, but we can't get rid of the building, so it will be preserved. But if the moving on the same lot, that what exactly hoops we have to jump to get there, we weren't able to get a clear answer from folks.
Will you explain again why you're moving it?
Well, mostly parking. So to get a building together in the corner and to have the 6 parking spots we're proposing, it has to move. And then there's also just an idea of functional obsolescence. So that corner building, as you can see from the drawing, 385 square feet. That's a really small space. And obviously, if we were to build it back up to code, 80 to 100 square feet of that would be a handicap restroom, like it's a commercial building. So we're looking at, if those are commercial spaces, 25% is going to be a bathroom. So they're the one reason these things have sat there so long and in such terrible shape. They're so small that, like, what can they be? You know, what's a 300 square foot commercial space, or actually a 200 foot commercial space with a bathroom, or a 400 square foot residential unit that's smaller than a hotel room? Like, I mean, even a Marriott Residence Inn is almost 500 square feet. Extended stay is like 425 square feet. So those hotel rooms are actually bigger than what this little house is. So I want to like make sure it's really small. And so part of this shuffle is to make sure that when the owner invests, but when we bring it back to the neighborhood, that it's something that can be viable long-term, and we're not setting it up for failure again. And the neighborhood has to deal with more abandoned buildings in the future.
Connor, did you give any consideration to shifting building to back to the back right corner instead and constructing the commercial as an entirely new structure?
I think there was some consideration of that. I think there's an idea that the owner would kind of like to live on the property, and so, you know, 2 smaller, like a historic structure and a home that's maybe more in line with today's standards, helps kind of create the diversity of the neighborhood and housing stock.
And the special exception is for the corner building with the,
What the things he did when we rebuilt the corner building, it will meet the setback zoning. I think there was something about 1.5 feet. We're gonna extend 2 stories. We're actually, when we rebuild it, we will set it back to 3 feet from the property line.
And there are no schematics for like what a streetscape, what it would look like as a built structure.
No,
We
they have,
haven't designed it yet. Obviously, the small scale of it, that wasn't kind of part of the exercise. I'll make sure it's actually possible to build before we go into the design work.
And if you didn't have enough parking, what is the street parking like there?
In the daytime, there is a decent amount of cars, especially because there are at least 3 good-sized apartment buildings across the street being currently constructed. I would say I go to the pool, which is a block away on the weekends. I never have a problem parking there on the weekends, I think in the evening. I know there are some obviously newer apartment complexes towards the corner that have been built. I think some of the neighborhood concern is kind of directed at them. And I believe they actually charge the residents for parking, and so some of them maybe don't park in there to get charged. So I would say the times I've been there, there have been spaces available. It's not empty. You go probably a block or 2 in a direction, it does get empty pretty quickly, but maybe not right in front of this particular building.
Well, it's a tough piece of property, and a couple of things that I think the city does always sponsor is trying to activate corners. And I think you're trying to attempt to activate the corner. The ability to create some additional parking, I think, is good. The thought of incorporating the building into the new structure at that front corner, I think is an excellent idea. And if we could make that a condition, I would feel pretty comfortable with moving forward with the idea. Just would hate to approve it, and then all of a sudden we end up with new structures.
So, Mr. McKay, what is the condition that you're seeking to?
That we incorporate, I want to make sure I get the number correct. I was looking to see if I can see the blow up line pretty small. The Freeman's Cottage, the one in the that's going to be moved and incorporated into the corner,
Existing building 2.
right? Because I think, we don't want to necessarily back VAR into a situation, but we don't want it to change and us maybe not have the opportunity to take a second look at it.
Are you prepared to make a motion?
You have any thoughts?
To me, this is easy. That corner's a wreck. It needs to be improved. I'm with the city. So I'll go
Any
with
thoughts?
condition second, if that's your motion.
Okay.
Mr. McKay, would you like to state a motion or?
Sure, I make a motion for approval. As presented with the condition that the Freeman's Cottage is at 68. Lee, help me with the
Yes.
number, so I say.
68.5 Lee.
68.5 gets incorporated with the corner commercial property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morrison. Is there a, let's all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Grass opposes. The motion is approved with condition that 68.5 Lee is incorporated in the corner. Thank you. Thank you very much. Before we move on to new business, we'll return to item A1. Review the minutes and deferred applications from previously advertised BZA agendas. Review minutes of the September 19th, 2023 board meeting. I believe everybody has received those minutes. Is there a motion? Ms. Grass moves for approval. Is there a second? I'll second. Mr. Goodwin seconds. All those in favor? Aye. None opposed. Mr. Morrison abstains. Item B1, 55 San Souci Street, North Central Neighborhood, TMS number 463-0803-042, Zone SR2. Special exception under section 54-110 to allow a rear one-story addition, master bedroom, den, kitchen expansion, and deck that extends a non-conforming 3.6 foot east side setback and a 12.6 foot total side setback, 9 feet and 18 feet required. Owner Marshall Sanford, applicant Virginia Lane. Mr. Batchelder.
San Souci. So this is north central. And you see the house here on this zoning map on the south side of San Souci. Here is a view looking south at the house. One-story house, and the proposal is to construct a rear addition that is a one-story addition. Here you see the existing site plan. So the house is here, then there's this porch and a deck back here. That's low, a low deck, I would say, not elevated much. And more plans showing existing conditions. Existing floor plans. Elevations, existing. We'll get to the proposed. So this wall right here, I think that's the location of the existing rear wall of the house. So this is the addition that they're proposing to make, plus this this deck on the back side of the house, and then they'd incorporate the existing deck, I guess, into that footprint as well. And so I've highlighted that section of the addition that requires a special exception approval to extend that non-conforming side setback. And there's another view of that. Then you see the proposed elevations here. So this is the rear elevation, I believe. And the side elevation. Here's the deck back here with this fire pit, which meets the setback requirements. So that doesn't require your approval. And on the other side. So one-story addition. Really, I think in keeping with the house very nicely, and you can see the house next door at 53 has something longer footprint, similar in some respects to what's proposed here, although I don't think what is proposed here would be nearly as large. So I think it meets the special exception requirements and recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. The city's recommendation is for approval. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? The applicant present wish to speak on behalf of the application?
All right, Hunter Dawson here with Virginia Lane. And I just wanted to add that the Historic Charleston Foundation and the Preservation Society have put their seal of approval on as well.
Great, thank you.
And sorry, also the neighbor, but a letter in support.
Have we received that?
We did receive that.
$59.
59 cents. Yeah.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Mr. Morrison moves for approval. Ms. Grass seconds. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. The motion for approval is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is B2 8 Yaden Avenue, Burns Downs. TMS number 421-0200-169. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow a rear one-story addition bedroom that extends a non-conforming 5.3 foot west side setback, 9 feet required, zone SR2, Owner Nora Goldman, applicant John Romano, drafted architecture LLC. Mr. Batchelder.
So here we have another home with a proposed rear addition. This one is in Burns Downs. And here you see the zoning map and the house footprint on that map. The yard is very deep, so there's lots of room back to build a rear addition. And this drawing illustrates the proposed rear addition. So the existing house is here. And then this is the proposed addition. And they've crosshatched the area of the encroachment into the setback, which is a continuation of the existing non-conforming west side setback in this case. So special exception is required. And drawings. Existing and proposed. So you see the proposed elevation, side elevation on the bottom. This is the other side, proposed elevation. And another view. So again, another addition that really does a great job of seeking to maintain the existing character of the home while expanding the floor area of the house. So we recommend approval of this. We feel like it meets the special exception requirements and have no concerns with what they're proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. City's recommendation is for approval. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Is the applicant present? If you wish to speak.
John Romano. The only thing I really wanted to add was that we tried to reach out to the neighbor at 6 Eden to give them information on what we're proposing. We sent a certified letter about a month and a half ago. When we checked the USPS tracking, it still says it's in transit. I went down to the home personally this Friday and knocked on the door, didn't get an answer, but left a letter with business card and the site plan, asked them if they had questions or concerns to reach out to me. And I also spoke to a builder who's working on a home down the street who's told me that the home at 68 is currently being rented. So I don't know that the homeowners actually occupy that building.
Mr. Rana, did you talk to the neighbors at 10 as well? Or did you?
I did not.
Okay. Further questions? Discussion.
I make a motion for approval.
Motion for approval by Mr. McKay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morrison. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion is unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, B3, 155 Meeting Street, TMS number 457-08-02-011, 012, 111, and 112. Request special exception under section 54-220 to allow a 150 unit accommodations use in a GBA, General Business Accommodations Zone District. Mr. McKay is recused on this item. Batchelder.
So 155 Meeting Street is the site we're dealing with. This sits on the northwest corner of Meeting Street, and Morrowback Alley. And 155 Meeting Street is the address of the Days Inn, which has been on the site since 1968. And then you see 3 additional TMS numbers listed there. So that these are the 3 properties on the back side of the Days Inn. Currently, they're part of a surface parking lot that runs through the block from Morrowback Alley to Market Street. And they've been acquired by the developer to have those properties incorporated into the proposed hotel and condominium development. You can see on this site plan that, or on the zoning map, that the zoning of the property is general business. And within the accommodations overlay zone, which is represented by the cross hatching. And that the particular accommodation zone is A5, which allows a 150 room maximum. And you also see these dashed lines that don't align necessarily with the surrounding dashed lines. So the accommodations overlay zone was changed by City Council earlier this year, along with the height districts. They were reconfigured on this site after extensive meetings with the applicant and an application that went through the Planning Commission and City Council and was approved by City Council and recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, for that matter. The applicants for this proposed development have been working on this project for a while now, and they've had extensive meetings with the city staff. They've had extensive meetings with the public, and they've also gone through conceptual approval with the BZA-Z. They had to do that in order to acquire some additional height on part of the building. So it's been, the project is coming to you for the first time, but it's already had at least one public hearing at the BZA-Z and a number of public presentations in front of residents, neighborhood associations, and preservation groups. I know are very aware of what's proposed here, and City Council is very aware. So with that, I'll just skip on to the plans. Of course, the drawings are quite extensive. You had a chance to look at them. Pretty interesting how they are proposing to build back a new hotel on this site and incorporate the condominiums and the other amenities that will be part of that hotel. So here's a view of the existing property. The Days Inn has not been occupied for a number of years now. It was briefly occupied during COVID as transitional housing for folks, but it has not been used as a hotel recently. But it does have this restaurant on the ground floor that is still active. Of course, these buildings will be completely demolished. This is the building when it was built, 1968, the Golden Eagle Motor Inn. And of course, that, I don't know if that was a vacant property when that was constructed or the buildings, there were buildings that were demolished, but of course, there were historic buildings there in the past, and that information has already gone through BZA-Z, and they've of course approved the demolition of the existing Days Inn, which I don't think they probably hesitated with that one. So they made their application, and the written materials and responses to the special exception requirements are quite extensive. But they have satisfied, in my opinion, all of the requirements for the special exception, and have done so with a thorough explanation of what they're proposing. And so I have no objections, no reservation in recommending approval of this. But I'll run through it just to give you a little bit of information, a little bit more information. And then, of course, turn it over to the applicant, because I think you'll want to hear from them a little bit at least. But the building is designed, there are some important things that I think they're doing that will benefit the public here. So Meeting Street is a street with large buildings. It has had large buildings in the past historically and has large buildings now. And And has nice wide sidewalks. It's a wider street. And what they're doing here is essentially proposing what would appear to be 3 separate buildings from Meeting Street. They'll be connected, but they'll appear to be 3 separate buildings from Meeting Street, each a little bit different height. And the buildings on Meeting Street will be set back additional, I think it's an additional 5 feet beyond where the Days Inn sits today. And we felt like that was important in our discussions with them because they were asking for more height on the front buildings, and we felt that was appropriate if they were set back more. And if you think about it, the Mills House is a pretty tall building. So it has a setback, I think, of about 15 feet from the curb. And this building will have similar setback. So the height that they're proposing here takes advantage of the large site that they're working with and the ability to push the buildings back a little bit. These are just more photographs, but this site plan, this is the first floor plan, so it's hard to see this, but in fact, I think there is, yeah, this one. There's a 5-foot setback mentioned right here for the front of this building from the actual property line. And of course, they're providing a 10-foot wide sidewalk on Horrellbeck Alley. Right now, there's no sidewalk on Horrellbeck Alley on that side. And in order to build the building, the height that they're proposing, they have to do that, but that will be an important public benefit as well. And then on the back side where the surface parking lot is, they'll have this building on most of that, but there'll be a walkway that provides access to the back sides of the King Street buildings, and the walkway will lead north and connect to the parking lot, which will allow people to get to Market Street. So, and they can explain a little bit more about that, but basically, this is a large building and very complicated. It has on-site parking and basically 2 separate parking garages, and it rises up to 8 stories in the back portion. And has received conceptual approval from the BAR, like I said. So it is quite a proposal, and our recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. I do have one quick question, and I think you touched on it. What is the current accommodation zone? And is there, I might have missed it, is there a portion of this lot that's incorporated in that accommodation zone?
So the entire property is within the accommodations overlay zone.
Right.
And city council, it was a 50 room limit originally, because when we adopted the limits, we applied those 50 room limits to everything south of Calhoun, with a few exceptions. But this property was under the 50 room restriction. So for them to tear down the existing hotel, which is 124 rooms, I think, and build back a new hotel, they would have had to seek the rezoning, which they did, or seek a variance, which I don't think that would be an application would be provable, but they sought the rezoning to increase the number of rooms that would be allowed up to 150 rooms. And the 50 room limit, just so you know, that applies to everything, including Charleston Place, the Mills House, other hotels south of Calhoun that are obviously larger than 50 rooms, but here I think the city was clearly supportive of the idea of redeveloping the site for a hotel, and it will have a mixture of uses as well. It'll have restaurants, it will have a banquet space, meeting banquet space. It will have 50 residential units and parking and offices as well. I think there's an office. Some portion of this, but anyway, I mean, event space. So anyway, that's the current zoning for accommodations.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. So the city's recommendation is for approval. There has been a fair bit of public comment we have received. Has there been anything else since the most recent? Since I covered this morning?
Right, is that didn't
What is that?
send additional.
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Mr. Wilson, I believe you're here to speak on behalf. Why don't you come on ahead and share with us?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm James Wilson with Lovell Bond Dickinson here on behalf of the applicant for this project. With me is Steve Ramos, architect, part of the architectural team, and Brad Cook with Strategic Property Partners. So I'm just going to hit a couple of quick highlights. Let Steve walk you through, briefly walk you through the site plan and the floor plan. And then I will try to very quickly just run through the criteria just to make sure we've satisfied the requirement for the board to consider these things. Although I believe Mr. Batchelder has pretty thoroughly covered those, but I'll try to do it very quickly. So just big picture, mixed use project with 150 hotel rooms, up to 50 residential condominium units. May end up doing a little bit less than 50, but that's the initial project. We'll have restaurant space, as well as we'll have some retail and a spa element to it. Mr. Batchelder, there is actually not office planned in this particular project. But, the property obviously has a long history of hotel use. 124 written days in it was most recently was a legal non-conforming use. So when we went back to planning commission and city council, we said, look, we'd like to go from the existing 124 legal non-conforming use up to 150 permitted under the A5 zone, and planning commission was supportive and city council was supportive of that as well. And then of course we've been through conceptual VAR to look at the height scale and mass and have conceptual VAR approval. Just big picture, the way we see this is, obviously the Days Inn is something of an eyesore, and it's a little bit of sort of a dead zone. We're hoping to bring back some vitality and pedestrian activity to this site, and particularly to create connectivity from Meeting to King, which doesn't exist. As you all know, there's no sidewalk on the north side of Pearl back there. The Days Inn wall is literally right on the curve. So there are a few public improvements. As Mr. Batchelder said, we're going to expand that front sidewalk that you're looking at on the image right now, as well as create a totally new 10-foot sidewalk on Pearlback Alley that you also see in this image. But then really importantly, we're also going to create a pedestrian alley on the west side of the hotel building, between the buildings and the buildings that front on King Street, and create new pedestrian connectivity and kind of alley there. The hope actually with that alley is to ultimately have it connect all the way up to Market Street. There are a couple more parcels up there, and so we're working with the city and the mayor to the city owns one of those pieces to do that, and that's something that the mayor's been very excited about, and as are we. We've met with everybody a lot, kind of to their exhaustion. We've met a lot with the French Quarter, their tenants on the opposite side of the meeting. We've met with Charleston Village Neighborhood Association, which is on the King Street side. They both submitted letters or emails of support for the project. And very importantly, we've met multiple times with there's a group of condos at 15 Pearlback, just on the south side of Pearlback, and we've kind of worked with them to tweak the plan a little bit, and they're very supportive as well, as are a good number of King Street business owners. So we're excited about the fact that we got a plan that we feel like we've got really good community buy-in on.
So with that, I'll let Steve walk you through the plans very quickly, and then, as I said, I'll try to go super fast through the criteria just to make sure we hit it all. Thanks.
Steve Ramos, I'm an architect here in Charleston, and I don't have a lot to say because Lee took my presentation, and I think you took a lot of my speaking points as well, so I'll be really brief. But this is the architecture that was approved at the BAR. A lot of thought and diligence went into getting it this to where we're at today in terms of breaking the building up into a series of masses. They read as individual buildings, but they really are connected. But most important, the ground level streetscape experience was paramount to the project. Mr. Batchelder, Mr. Wilson mentioned the setbacks that we've created along Meeting Street and Hurlbeck, where we've really greatly enhanced the sidewalks, but also in terms of creating active uses of the ground floor was really important to the project. Although this is a hotel building, all of the uses fronting on Meeting Street are either retail or restaurant. So really keeping up with the character of King Street and Meeting Street and having, active ground floor uses. So that was something that was really important to us. In terms of some of the layout of the building, the hotel lobby is right at the end here. So there is a one-way drive off of Meeting Street. So this is Meeting Street. This is south. This is north. So cars will enter the site into this driveway. So all of the queuing and parking is all being captured on site. And you'll exit your vehicle here. Valet will then take your car either into the underground garage. We also have an above ground garage as well. But that lobby kind of passes through the building to a really beautiful courtyard. There's also going to be lots of opportunity for outdoor dining around the structure. So it's really going to change the character of not just this block, but I think it's part of the city for the good. Lee, if you could back up to the site plan, and I'll just point out some of the uses. And this is color coded, so everything that's in pink is going to be food and beverage, so either restaurant or cafe. We do have some smaller retail uses on Hurlbeck that are kind of in a dark orange color. The blue color, kind of in the center, that's where the lobby is. And that's actually designed so that you can actually pass through the building. Some of you may kind of pass through Charleston Place. It'll be a similar experience. There's going to be a large spa component as well. And then everything that you see in gray, that's all kind of back of house service area. I want to hit on car circulation. That's something that's always important to these approvals. So I commented that there's a one-way drive that cuts through from Meeting Street and then down to Hurlbeck Alley. You'll see that there is an access to an underground garage, which is, that's right there. There's about 175 parking spaces underneath the footprint of the building. That's where a majority of the cars will go. These are all queuing spaces for valet. They're not counted in our parking count, so those are strategically queuing. We have service areas along Hurlbeck, both trash pickup, loading, and deliveries. We have a loading area that is inboard of the building footprint, so we won't be having trucks out on the street. We have a little bit of additional parking above grade, about 50 cars here. That's what this is. Hurlbeck Alley, although it's a narrow street, it is a two-way lane. One of the support letters we received was from the folks that live at 15 Hurlbeck. That's a building that's right about here. We spent a lot of time with them because they are the residents that are most impacted by this project because they're the closest. And they've been very supportive of what we're trying to achieve. I think they're excited about all of the amenities that they're going to be able to use, but also we've worked with them about vehicle circulation. Most notably, they thought it was important. They wanted egress or exit from the garage to only go towards Meeting Street. So we're going to have a left turn only sign here. We're also going to change the curb so that it really kind of prohibits you from turning right. So that was a little concession, but we were more than happy to do that. So happy that we were able to gain support of those neighbors. Next slide, please. This is a mezzanine level. You can see the above ground parking here. Next. So what you're seeing in blue, those are hotel rooms there. There's a ballroom and meeting space. BZA, a special exception requires a certain amount of meeting space. We are exceeding the requirement. Next. And then on this floor, it's all hotel rooms. This is level 3. So everything you see in blue there is a hotel room. Next slide. And once you get up to level 4, this is where we have both hotel rooms and condos. So what you're seeing in yellow are condos. Although we only have 50, they are large condos. So believe it or not, almost half of the upper floors is dedicated to residential condos, and the other half is hotel rooms. Next. And this, you can kind of march your way up and you'll see just that pattern of yellow is condo, blue is hotel room. And then this is the 8th floor. This is one of the main amenity levels. There will be an exterior pool that you see on the western wing of the building, some cabanas. Everything that you see in pink will be food and beverage on this level. I'll just kind of outline the interior space. So this shape is interior, and then the rest of that space is all outdoor space. The hatch pattern is just us keeping track of the amount of food and beverage as part of the hotel, because as you all know, there's a limitation to 12% of the conditioned space. So that's how we are kind of keeping track of that. Next. This is just simply a roof plan. Next. And then back to the renderings. And I think at this point, I'll just turn it back over to James. He's going to speak to the special exception test.
Great, thanks, Steve. So I'll try to do this real quickly. There haven't been any residential on the project, so we're not displacing any residential, nor has there been office, so not displacing office. We're actually going to increase restaurant, retail, storefront on the ground floor. Cars coming to and from are expected to use Meeting Street and then circulate to the property the way Steve described, so they don't need to cross any residential districts to get to the property. We'll have a mix of uses to contribute to a mixed use district. We'll of course stay within the 12% in terms of food and beverage, as Steve said. The guest drop off and pickup is all located on site in that valet area within the site that Steve was showing you. We'll exceed 10 sleeping units. We're within the A5 zone. Remember, that's what council rezoned the property to, A5, which permits 150 hotel rooms, which is what we're proposing. We won't share our building facilities with other hotels. That's one test. Include the required square footage for meeting space. We'll exceed that. We're not a full service hotel because we're not in excess of 150 sleeping units. Of course, we'll make the contribution to the city's affordable housing fund. All hotels do that now, and of course that will be paid at issuance of a CO. The traffic memo was submitted as usual with the application describing traffic impact, and the simple way I would describe it is, of course, we had 124 room hotel, now we have 150, so that's a pretty marginal difference. And if you look at the traffic from that, the existing hotel and the existing parking lot in the back, Jennifer Beal, a traffic engineer, wrote the memo, looked at the existing trips compared to what the proposed would generate. It of course would be a little bit of an increase, but a relatively modest increase as shown in the memo. Main entrance is on Meeting Street, which is an arterial road. The project's consistent with predominant land uses around us, which are restaurants, offices, retail, church, museum, some reseential, as well, of course, as other hotels like the Meeting Street Inn that you see right there on the photo image. Nearest residential neighborhood, actual neighborhood, there's the residential building on whole bit for that would be on Clifford Street, which is about that residential area is about 400 feet to the west of the property, so not really in a position to be impacted one way or another. The ancillary uses that we've talked about are the retail, restaurant, bar space, spa uses. These aren't expected to materially impact the neighborhood in any way. Off-street parking, of course, we're going to meet the parking requirement, 2 spaces for every 3 hotel rooms. So for 150 hotel rooms, that would be 100 spaces required for that. And then for 50 residential condos, at 1.5 spaces per condo, that's another 75 spaces. So the requirement is 175. We will have at least 229 spaces at least on site. So we'll exceed the 175 by a comfortable margin. No known industrial uses within 500 feet. The design team will be committed to sustainability and reduction of waste and recycling. We're within easy walking distance to lots of tourist attractions, like the Gibbs, the market, King Street. We're located directly on one Carter route and just about a block away from a couple of others. Peak period of our sort of peak shift of employees would be expected to be about 100 employees total within the whole site. And so we generally, part of the test is to make sure that to the extent you have employees who might drive to work, you've got ample space. As I was saying, we've got minimum of 229 spaces and only 175 required. So we've got a nice comfortable margin, we believe there. Obviously not all employees come drive to work, most are expected not to. And we of course will make a contribution for employees who wish to use carded. We'll subsidize at least 30% of monthly card passes, and we will provide bicycle storage on site for employees who would like to work. We'll of course make commitment to make good faith affirmative efforts to solicit minority business enterprises and women-owned business enterprises as part of the project, and to employ folks who are representative of the Charleston community at all levels. That is all the criteria. We're all happy to answer any questions, talk about things that we didn't cover or otherwise. And thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Just real quickly, I do have one question, Mr. Ramos. I've noticed you've got for what appears to be the residential parking coming out of the far west end of Hallback Alley, that it's a turn left only out towards Meeting. I'm curious if your intent is the same for both the loading dock portion as well as the folks coming out of the hotel to also turn left out towards Meeting. You can see it marked.
Yeah, definitely the loading dock, just because going towards King Street with a large vehicle would be tricky.
Super tight turn
Yeah,
right there
right.
when you get to the end.
Now, for coming out of this driveway, you do want the ability to turn right, because in some instances, the valet may be taking the car from here and taking it into this parking deck.
Okay.
But we expect that most people are gonna turn left to go to this intersection, when they're actually leaving the facility.
Did the loading dock have, and it appears to be set back far enough that there's enough room to back in and turn around? I didn't know.
That's exactly the plan, is that
Okay.
trucks would come in from Meeting down Trollback and then back in here and then exit back.
And exit back out towards Meeting. Okay.
Yeah, because the 10-foot setback that we've created is here, but it goes back about another 7 feet at this building facade. So currently it's a 24-foot, actually might be like 23 building to building, and it's gonna go to 34 feet and then about 41 feet. So it's
Yeah.
greatly improving that condition.
And honestly, I was really just thinking primarily for trucks that turn right because they don't know otherwise. It does get extremely tight when you make that turn onto King from Hallback Alley.
I think they'll only do it once.
Yeah, I was just gonna say they won't make that mistake twice.
And I have a follow-up question to that. So the residents at 15 Hallback Alley did not request that the Hallback Alley exit turn left. It was only the delivery.
No, it was actually, if you go to the plan before this is a site plan, I think. Yeah, this is perfect. So here's the building. So they were actually most concerned with folks that would be coming out and turning right while they're trying to come out. It's just so tight that it would create like a log jam. So that this was their primary concern, was this entrance. So
But not the other one.
no, that was not. Yeah, it was really just the confluence of cars, and but we've had I think 3 meetings with James Wallace in Traffic and Transportation. we've worked through a lot of issues, but one of the things we're gonna do is include here, we're actually gonna kind of sculpt the curb so that really kind of forces people to turn left, and that actually occurs at the Queen Street garage, which is kind of down here. And he was agreeable to that, so.
And I apologize, I should have hit that. The traffic plan has been submitted to traffic and transportation. I think Mr. Batchelor got back affirmative, confirmations.
And Ms. Beal is here to answer questions as well.
It does have any interior retail space that is accessed from the interior hotel and not just from the exterior.
I don't think we're that developed in the frame.
This piece up here, we've shown it as restaurant or retail because that's to be determined. We wanted to include it as possible restaurant space and include it in our 12% count. But that could go either direction, I believe.
One thing, the reason I bring that up is because the Charleston place feels like a community. I'm inside the Charleston place, I'm part of it. Sometimes when you can only get in from the outside, you don't feel like it's part of you. This place appears to be a special place, but I'm not sure it offers, unless you stay in there, you're not supposed to be there kind of feel. And so if there was some inside portion that invited the public in to kind of make you feel like it's a part of you, it would give the community a sense of pride in it. And I think it would.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is Brad Cook,
Development team. So it's a great question. So part of the original idea of working with community was we got pushed to do just that. So I've just walked through kind of a day in the life if you're not staying at the hotel, how you might experience it. And again, we're still working through who the actual tenants will be, but if you imagine, cafe and restaurant, but then you're moving in, there's a hotel lounge with a bar, there's another restaurant here. There's a spa space here, and there's a big courtyard here. And the idea was that, like Charleston Place, when you see that rendering from the street, we're hoping that it's welcoming, inviting you to bring you through the site. This will be a double height space. You'll see through to this, what will be a beautiful courtyard. You kind of meander through there all the way to this alleyway that's along the back, which will be inspired by a lot of Charleston's beautiful alleyways. So you can, connect through this space. And there's even a little laneway here, Fulton Lane, that connects all the way through to King Street. So from the beginning, a big part of the idea of the project was, not just for people that are staying at the hotel, but really to invite that street life in and through the site. So that's driven a lot of our planning.
Perfect. And the restaurants will be, open to the public as well. I mean, they are guest only restaurants. So that's an important piece of it.
We like for all our buildings to be an experience, and that's what you just kind of put out. You need the experience of, I want to stay there one day, maybe not today.
Right.
Oh, wow, this is nice. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
So, it's impressive, I think, more so because you can tell that you really collaborated with everybody, all the stakeholders. And it really makes it that much of a better project.
It's been a good process.
I'm impressed, and with that being said, I'd make a motion for approval.
Move for approval by Mr. Goodwin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morrison. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. Thank you very much. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is B4, 1117 King Street, North Central Neighborhood, TMS number 463-1201-127, zoned GB. Request variance from section 54-317 to allow a restaurant bar with 500 square feet of inside patron use area, 520 square feet of outside patron use area with 7 off-street parking spaces. 9 spaces are required. Owner RM Buck General Contractors, applicant Synchronicity, Luke Jarrett. Mr. Wilson, or Mr. Batchelder, excuse me.
So this is a commercially zoned property on the south west corner of King Street and Poplar Street in the north central neighborhood. And the zoning map shows its location on that corner. And it shows the existing one-story building that occupies the property. Together with some surface parking. But you can see that the GB zoning that is indicated in red on this map is on both sides of King Street in this immediate area. It's been that way for many years. It may go back to the 60s or maybe before that even, but you've got a mix of residential uses and non-residential uses up there in this area. So the GB zoning on the other side of the street doesn't make a lot of sense, but on this side it does. Here is the applicant's material. So this is what they're proposing to do, take the existing building and make some modifications to it and turn it into a restaurant space. I think when it was originally built, maybe it was an office. And then it was used as a Islamic center for a number of years, but it's been vacant, I think, for a little while now. And as my understanding, no.
Just a few years. I
Just a
think
few
some
years.
COVID,
Yeah.
seems like.
So the site is site plan has been developed so that what they're proposing to do is actually remove a portion of the rear of the building in order to provide accessibility to more parking spaces on the back of the property. And then there'll be these two spaces right here. And that would create some space on the outside for dining. So this is covered outdoor dining right here and the interior right here. So small restaurant and proposed elevations. These are photographs of the existing conditions. It's an interesting building, I guess, built in the 1960s, maybe. But that is the proposal, and see that outdoor dining on the site plan here, and the door space right here. So property is zoned general business, so restaurant use is permitted use, and GB is what applies to King Street, Lower King Street, and shopping centers typically in other areas where you have intensive commercial uses. So what they're proposing is not out of character for that zoning. It is short, 2 spaces, but there's a lot of parking in front. In this image right here, you can see that this is on-street parking on the entire frontage of the property right here on this side of King Street. And so hopefully that doesn't become any kind of an issue. I think it seems to be very well received by other folks in the neighborhood who've written letters in support of this and are welcoming the opportunity to have a restaurant close by that they can walk to. And so we feel that they meet the requirements for the granting of the variance in this case, and recommend approval with a condition. And I already mentioned this to the applicant, but just a condition about no sound amplification above normal conversational tones. I don't think this that size restaurant where that would be proposed, but just to keep it from becoming that in the future. You never know what some future owner might do. I would propose that condition.
But no live music.
I didn't suggest that, but you could maybe suggest that with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. For the city's recommendation is for approval with a condition for no sound amplification, but normal conversation. Is there anyone present in opposition? Is the applicant here? Please come on up and state your name and.
Appreciate it. I won't take too much of your time. My name is Luke Jarrett from Synchronous. I'm the architect also here. Brian Buck, who's and again, I will keep this brief. The genesis of this project is to try and find a way to reuse an interesting little building that is currently not historic and not really protected, but we felt was very appropriate in terms of its scale for a neighborhood use. So we've been able to work with our clients to kind of establish a best use for him and also for the neighborhood. As Lee mentioned, the building's a little too big. So we're actually proposing to cut some of the back of it off to allow us to give us the maximum amount of parking. Open up, the windows on the front of this building, these fun little bristlets are actually brick, on the back, we'll be restoring them. But I think the main thing we were really excited about also was, the building will become historic pretty soon. Through this project, we will be preserving all the character defining elements and also giving it an opportunity to then become protected down the road and hopefully keep this commercial district neighborhood oriented, friendly, et cetera. The last thing I will say is we've been in good contact with the neighbor association, also both of our neighbors to the rear 31 and across King Street 1119 King Street. And are committed to keeping them involved in the process and making sure that we take feedback and keep them aware of what we're doing. Again, because our client and I, we believe that good neighbor is a key thing to be here. So, thank you very much for your time. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I wanted to ask you about the ingress egress, just since that curb cut is, to turn into the first, it has the little U. Have you considered maybe having ingress only in the second turning lane? Oh, you know what I'm saying? And then egress, so only one way in and out, since it's so tight right there coming off of King Street.
Yes, and I believe that that is approach. These parking spaces are kind of angled to where they need to work that way. And and I'm glad that you said that also. And a big goal is to keep impact to the neighborhood to a minimum. So hopefully, like you said, people will come in, visit us and leave. And then also we're excited to be able to provide places for rideshare drop off so that they don't stop in the middle of King Street like some of the other restaurants and cause everybody pain. But we will, as we move forward, that will be delineated, and that's the intent.
So what are your hours? I didn't see that one.
Our client is currently hired us to kind of rehabilitate the building and make a program. So we don't actually have a tenant who is contracted for the design yet. I think, are you aware of any of that?
No, and we talked to Lee about making sure the hours are within the ordinance or the other restaurants that are nearby. It's gonna be a neighborhood restaurant, so no late hours is the plan.
Yeah, they can't operate beyond midnight
Right.
without coming back to the board.
And how do you think you would feel if we put a condition on no live music?
I would ask that you would put a condition on there similar to what Lee's recommended for no amplified live music, because I do think it would be appropriate to have, someone playing a guitar or something like that, in our covered area. I think we could do that very well without, causing harm to our neighbors. And again, we are in communication with our neighbors and will be. So hopefully if we were doing anything and all this bothersome, they'll let us know. So that would be our request. Music is nice, but not loud music.
So no amplified music above the level,
Conversation.
right? So that would cover live music too.
Yeah, if it was amplified.
Right.
So if it was somebody with an acoustic guitar playing and singing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Batchelor, I'm curious, is the conversion to indoor and outdoor space, does that have any impact on the calculation for required parking spaces? Or is there a distinction between the two?
There is a different requirement between the two.
Okay, so by converting from outdoor, that maybe reduces the requirement, or does that?
I believe it does.
Yeah, would you like me to?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. A big challenge here again was to try and, this building is kind of fun and cool. It's been there a while. And so we're doing everything we can to not have to drastically alter it. And what we found was it's too big of a building for this all to be interior space, and the ratio between back of houses, it wouldn't work for a restaurant. We've done a lot of them. That, and then, right now, after what we've seen over the last few years, being able to have an outdoor covered dining area preferable to indoor dining areas in most locations. So for that reason, and also, it allows us to continue to use as full of an envelope of this building as possible. So it's we made the decision on a lot of reasons for use, because it allows us to use the building without further alterations, et cetera. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It was more of a calculation question, I think.
Oh, yeah, so it's 130 square feet of outdoor patron use area per parking space, 100 square feet indoor patron per parking space.
Okay, so there is okay, that
A
makes
slight
sense.
reduction, yeah, thank you.
And how many seats?
The seats of the restaurant, again, we don't know exactly how many, this is a graphic that demonstrates the potential layout for the restaurant. The building itself is not being, proposed to be sprinkled, so the occupant load of the entire building and any coverings around it will never be more than 99. But realistically, operationally, I would imagine there would be about 50 people at most in here before it would be so uncomfortable that no one would come back. These are small little spaces, kind of like Berkeley's at the corner of Rutledge and UG Street, about that scale. So a pretty small little neighborhood restaurant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Questions for the applicant?
Move approval
Mr. Morrison moves for approval. Is there a second?
with the condition stated about no amplified music.
Mr. Morrison moves for approval with a condition, no sound amplification, but normal conversational tones. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. McKay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none are opposed. The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is B5, 36 Shepherd Street, East Side Neighborhood, TMS number 459-05-03-019, zone DR2F. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow a rear two-story addition, stairs, hall, baths, bedrooms, closet, deck that extends a non-conforming 0-foot east side setback, 3 feet required. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow a rear two-story addition, having a 55% lot occupancy, 40% existing, 50% limitation. Owner Flipside SC LLC, applicant John Sullivan S Arc Studio. Mr. Batchelder.
So this is a property in the east side neighborhood. It's a residential property on the western side of the neighborhood. You can see that it's very close to Meeting Street. And the other thing you'll notice on this plan is the other residential properties around it on these on this brown shaded area. This is the residential zoning district. And so those are all residential structures. And you can see that the typical lot is pretty small on Shepherd Street, on Cooper Street, immediately to the north. And if you go south, Ducks Court, those are very small lots as well. And the houses are quite large relative to the size of those lots. So I just point that out. The applicant has some materials on that in their application as well, but this is an aerial photograph indicating the location of the property, applicant's materials. They submitted this illustration that shows the lot occupancies of surrounding residential properties. And you can see that almost every one of them in this plan is over 50% maximum allowed lot occupancy, and some are quite large, much larger than 50%. So what they're proposing with a 55% lot occupancy, but this addition is not out of character with the immediate area. So they would like to renovate the existing one-story house that's on this property and build a two-story addition back. And so the footprint of that addition is what triggers the need for the variance to exceed the 50% lot occupancy. Go up to 55%. And then the special exception is necessary because they would be, back to this, they're basically extending the non-conforming east side setback in this area with this proposed addition. They are not encroaching into the required rear 3-foot rear setback. And they're not encroaching into the north west side setback. So the only issue is that east side setback adjacent to the property at 34 Shepherd Street. And these floor plans illustrate the 2-story addition. I don't know if this is correct, but the Charleston County records for this existing house indicate that it's 841 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. So the addition would create 3 more 3 bedrooms on this property, and then the existing house would be enlarged with larger living spaces. So proposed elevation here. And photographs of surrounding homes. And this is, I guess, the blow up of that site plan right here. And we received a number of letters, including this one from the homeowner at 34 Shepherd, the most impacted neighbor. And he's indicating his support for the request. And then I think there were maybe some other letters as well, by the folks in that area. But so we think that they satisfy the variance test and the special exception requirements, and we recommend approval of this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. City's recommendation is for approval. I don't believe anybody's here in opposition. Mr. Sullivan, if you wish to add.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something so it doesn't come out later. So the 55% is including this void area here. There's the original SERP plat when my client was doing it. Plat actually showed on record coming all the way 10 feet over to the right. We didn't think that was correct because the county map, the 51 Sanborn always shows it this way. And we went back to him, it's like, hey, shouldn't it start over here? And he's like, no, but we need to cut it off right here because it's been occupied by your neighbor for X long. So he adjusted the property line to the occupancy. This area here is a void area. We're attempting to get it. We thought it was going to be a lot easier than it's not. Our neighbor to the left is the DOT, so you can imagine how that is. But they filed a plat that showed that as their property line. So we're actually at like 64.18, I think, %, not including that void area. So we don't have that void area now. We're trying to get it, but that could take years, but we want to go ahead. So we don't want to the whole thing up.
As far as your plan, so it has an addition, first floor addition, second floor addition.
There's a 1-story little connector piece to kind of separate the 2-story addition away from the house. And electrically, like the county, and it actually is 3 bedrooms, 1 bath right now. It's cut up into 3 bedrooms in the main area with 1 bath addition hanging off the back of this house. So we actually aren't ceasing any bedrooms when it's there.
And the second floor, is there a deck on the second floor?
There's a little deck off of that, and then we kind of doing a flat roof. We're not doing like a structure coming up, but we're talking about maybe doing a hatch to do the little roof area, because it would be nice. You could see the bridge there, and that's in that area that a lot of new houses that have kind of decks. But we're not doing any kind of roof structure to get up there. But the idea is to kind of, we could have like reduced the area and did the 2-story addition hidden against the one-story treatment, but we didn't want to do that, so we're trying to preserve that. You know, we're not in BAR except for demo here, but we wanted to kind of push that away, so that kind of increased the lot area a little bit.
And as far as the city is concerned, roof decks are okay.
Yes.
More questions or further discussion? Grass moves for approval. Is there a second? Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. The motion is approved. The final item on the agenda is the 648 and 50 Cooper Street East Side TMS number 459-06-01-015, zoned DR2F. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow a front, rear, and third story additions that extend a non-conforming 0-foot front setback, 2.3 feet east side setback, 0 feet west side setback, and a 2.3 foot total side setback, 25 feet, 3 feet, 7 feet, and 10 feet required. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow 2 dwelling units on a 2,623 square foot lot, 4,000 square feet required. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow construction of a 2-family residence with a 65% lot occupancy, 54% existing, 50% limitation. Owner RCC BB Properties LLC, applicant Habitable Form Chelsea Anderson. Mr. Batchelder.
So this is one TMS number, but 2 addresses, each one corresponds to a residential unit. Both are dilapidated and they've been approved for demolition by the BAR. So the proposal is to go back with 2 residential units on this property. It's a corner property in America, Cooper Street. And just, I think it was the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we approved a new house at 46.5 Cooper Street right here. And this property, like 46.5 Cooper Street, will have access from America Street for parking. I'll see that on the plan. So existing aerial view of the property. This is the street view. And you can see both buildings are basically condemned and have not been occupied for some time. At least not intentionally, I don't think. And so here's the applicant's presentation. This shows the existing survey of buildings. And let's see here. Zoning. Now you see on this the illustration of other properties with lot occupancies that exceed the 50% limit. They're asking for 65% lot occupancy in this case. And so photos, buildings are in extremely poor condition. Looks like a fire. So I've been on this one of the buildings at least. Views. This is the proposed site plan. Ground floor would have parking underneath, accessed off this shared access easement from America Street. And then there would be entrances, small foyer and stairs leading up to the first floor of each of the units on Cooper Street. And then you have the living space for the units on the first floor. And bedrooms, 3 bedrooms in each unit on the second floor. And just schematic elevation showing what they're proposing. They have flood zone impacts here, so they can't put back the residential structure with the first floor is low to the ground. And rear elevation shown here. Side elevation. And these are just letters about I think these were used for the demolition approval. BAR, which was granted back in 2022. So that concludes the applicant's slides, and the special exceptions have to do with building back this new building. And this kind of illustrates the footprint of the existing buildings in the blue with the proposed footprints shown here. So you have a real good comparison of how the footprints of the proposed building will relate to what's there today. And out of that comes the request for the special exceptions to extend non-conforming setbacks and variance to allow 2 dwelling units on this lot. The reason for the variance is that, number one, the units haven't been occupied for a while. That when you have a non-conforming use and you demolish the building, you lose the right to that non-conforming use. That doesn't work the same way with building setbacks. So the footprint is grandfathered. You could go back at the same footprint, but you can't keep a non-conforming use within that new building, even though it might be in the same footprint. So that's the reason for the variance, to allow the 2 dwelling units on this property. But we have supported these kinds of requests in the past. And I think it's appropriate here. We certainly want to see housing developed where possible, in the city. And they provided the parking on site. And there's been no opposition that I'm aware of to this request. So our recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. City's recommendation is for approval. Is there anyone here in opposition? The applicant like to speak or present?
No, I'm here if you guys have any questions.
I actually have one question. Is the lot on the corner, it appears in one plat like it's at 90 degrees, but then in the drawing, maybe it's skewed. So the plan is to align to the Cooper Street facade, not the not.
Yes, yes, that's the plan. That's the frontage.
Was there any thought to maybe stepping back one portion to kind of break up the facade a little bit? I realize it's a duplex, it's kind of tied together. Just curious what.
Maybe architecturally, if that gives a sense of 2 dwellings versus one big structure. To do that aesthetically, I would think it would be the unit plan north, because then you could still get the correct vehicle turn into that garage. And so we just have to study that with like an auto turn to make sure that you can still access that parking appropriately. But I see your point there, to break down the scale a bit of that facade.
Yeah, and I'm, just thinking that might help. But that's just, that's just my thought. I have other comments and questions on the application.
I was just curious, the sizes of the units.
Total area 1,700 square feet condition
For each.
for each.
We made them 3 bedrooms on purpose, and these won't be used as, as rental properties. Our goal is to have, just a single family home here. And the other reason why we're at the setback is, it's very hard to park right there at that far corner. And if you see right here, there's a storm inlet here, and there's a big oak tree here that we're not going to, it's a protected tree. So you couldn't access it here. So it'd be a nice swing around, then we would have 2 cars off street, which would be very nice. Like I said, stop sign here, you can't really park right here or here. We have some really nice parking for each of these homes.
And the turn to the south one is that's the tight one.
That's the type one.
Yeah, okay.
These designs need additional approvals.
No, they do not. They are not within the jurisdiction of the BAR for design review for new construction.
Can we see what they look like?
Rear elevation. This would be America Street.
And your recommendation, Mr. Bennett, was
my thought was if you shift 50 Cooper Street back a little bit, you break up the mass. Doesn't look like you open the book up. And I think it would probably benefit the appearance of that front.
appearance is relatively boxy, and I'm sure it actually looks like the character of the street. And so I do have a little bit of concern about that. What's there now is a little offset. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
And I think that offset would give some impression that we're trying to actually look like it was there. But it does look very vanilla from what we're looking at.
I don't know, if you offset it far enough back to match the original facade.
Yeah, not to mess.
That might be too far.
Right, that might be too far, but I agree with you, some adjustment, if it works in the back, I think would be prudent.
I'd like to show you one rendering, if that's okay. Could I pass on an iPad to them to show if you actually have a rendering of the rear that I'd like to show you for aesthetic purposes of the back of it?
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Would you be able to email this to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
To the city, yeah.
So the idea is like a court in the back
Oh, okay.
with some like decks with, some nice landscaping. That's the idea. And so keeping the facade flat to the back does provide that benefit of more space back here in this courtyard that we're creating for the residents. But maybe there is something to do to the massing. Something I also thought about to the massing is stepping back slightly in the middle between the two. Just like 2 feet to give it just some texture.
Show us the first one.
Oh, yeah, sure. The first one is, that courtyard.
Oh, they're both courtyard.
Oh, yeah, the courtyard. Yeah, I don't have anything of the front yet. No.
Yeah, these were just lines on paper. It's gonna be a very beautifully done, very physically house.
Exactly, just massings at this point, but I do see what you're saying with a little bit of step back and the massing to provide some texture.
I think one of the challenges we're faced with is because it's not under VAR's purview, you have to, it's really helpful for us to understand what the architectural intent is. Even if it's, that sort of the last stop before it gets built. And I think, I feel like, I know not all the architectural detailing is present, but I think that maybe advancing the design would be helpful. I don't know if the rest of the board would feel similarly. That's just my thought. Having some maybe explanation of what's intended at the parapet, for example, and as well as how, right? So you won't notice a dashed line subdivided property on the front unless there's an expansion joint and stucco. Maybe that's the intent. I don't know. I don't know what the goal is with the final design, but it's, if you look at it without that lot, how would you know? They're two unique buildings, right?
Well, we were looking at, these buildings are brick, so they're actually gonna have brick detailing and courses and, you know, the indication of like columns between the two buildings. And so that was the idea, to provide texture within the facade, to see that distinction between like two units. Just the detailing is not shown yet at this point.
But the roof would be flat.
No, you know what, actually now we're kind of moving towards like a hip roof, just it's more buildable, and a hip roof is the best for hurricane conditions. Good to parapet. But this is just being a massing at this point. But since this was not under BAR jurisdiction, we just looked at this as an application seeking zoning approval at this point.
And I guess your point is, because it's a variance request, one of the conditions is
Meeting the character.
meeting the character of the neighborhood, so that's kind of understand where all the questions are coming from.
That's sort of the last box to check for us.
I used to live on Cooper Street in 75, and this product here is gonna be one of the nicest products that we put out. It's gonna be the flagship of that corner, or a very architecturally detailed, beautiful house with a gorgeous courtyard that you enter with landscaping lights, etc.
If the board were to defer this item, and I'm not saying that they will, because there's not a motion for that, is there, how would that impact your application? And what I mean by that is, if we were to defer this item for maybe some additional information as far as architecture, with that, would you have a strong opposition to that? Would that prevent you from being able to move forward?
Well, just looking at, like, as the architect, I'm not wanting to proceed too far into my fee for my client in development of the architecture if we don't get granted the variances that we're seeking. Because then the project isn't as financially viable. So we just want to assure before we put too much investment into the property, that we've got that zoning approval.
Understood. Yep, that makes sense.
If the application gets declined, the issue that we have would be the parking. You know, it's 1.5 spots per home, which is 2 spots, right? So we don't know where else that they could really park on the site because of that big oak tree and other limiting factors. So that is the reason, part of the reason why we're asking for a little bit of an extension. It's this with that parking. I think off-street parking and hidden parking, you're not going to see the garages at all from any street. So they're all hidden inside the courtyard. I think having off-street 2-car parking for each home is imperative for downtown. Imperative.
What are some of your ideas on breaking up the match? Are you thinking about some shading, sunshades? You mentioned the hip roof. Maybe some of the ideas that could help us feel comfortable that you're going to be in character with.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first option was looking at brick detailing to do a brick either recess or extended to provide some shadows on the facade and some rhythm between the units. So either rhythming like bays between the windows and between the two units, like indicating like structural bays, basically, to give that rhythm to the facade. That was one option. Or two, maybe stepping back slightly where the entry is to indicate, and so that's in the center, step back a little in the entry, give a little bit of cover there, and then indicate the break between the two units. And then the third was if we might step back some portion of 48 Cooper, slightly like 2 feet, the whole unit, to just give that breakup of the facade, like stagger the two a bit, so then the back would also extend within the courtyard about 2 feet. So we just need to look at those massings, and then the idea was if we are going to step back 48 Cooper, we could treat those as 2 different roof lines, have 2 gabled roofs. If we are to keep it as one massing with breaking up the facade with rhythms of brick patterns and making it look as if there's columns, then it would be one hip roof. And then having moldings around the top and detailing within the brickwork
We also didn't do exterior staircase because I found that after 2 or 3 years of exterior wood staircase, we all know what happens to those. The pressure treated boards pop, the wood rot. So what we did was we put 2 front doors on the street. So when you're driving by, you don't think that that house is elevated with louvers. It's going to be beautiful brick coming down all the way. And then we're going to cover that with espalier with vines I put on the wall for a natural vegetation along America Street. Again, so when you're driving down, you don't think that house is on stilts. You think that house is lower, which is what we went for, trying to do a lower pitch roof. So it blends in more with the neighborhood. A lot of homes now are just on pilings.
But what's the height of your fenestration?
How tall of each of the windows within the unit, so they're 10-foot ceiling heights on each floor, or let's see, 10 foot on the first floor, 9 foot on the second, and so then they're 8 foot.
They intended to be able to open,
That's the idea, is that these are French doors.
so they're gonna be Juliet's.
Yeah, Juliet's, the railings aren't shown, but to be Juliet balconies across the front, yeah.
I'm getting more comfortable thinking that.
Okay, yeah.
with Juliet's.
Yeah.
And a set of hip roof, sorry, I know that's more expensive. And, you know, we're really not supposed to be architects, but we are supposed to keep the rhythm pattern feeling.
Yeah.
No, we agree.
Neighborhood.
We appreciate you.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, even
Does that make
just
you feel
the
better?
roof detail being different and fitting in would, I think, make a big difference.
Would y'all be open to approving it with conditions such as what you just mentioned?
You would be good?
Do we need to put conditions on it? I mean, I think.
Yeah, we need to put conditions on it. Yeah.
We want to make y'all feel
Yeah.
good too, so we're happy.
We need to put conditions on it or have them come back with it.
We can put conditions or y'all could come back. What would you like?
conditions would be best to keep moving forward for us on the project.
I think one of the challenges may be for us to outline what those conditions look like, and maybe you want to take a stab at it.
Yeah.
Okay, or-
Sure, I'd be glad, but y'all please jump in. And I think we like the double hip roof. I think we like the idea that they're operable doors, French doors with Juliet's. And the fact that you're going to use masonry and using different styles of masonry to create accents around the house.
Did you mention that?
Oh, and then studying the potential setting back of
Sure.
48 to create sightline differentials.
That's why you're running faster than I am. So I'm gonna roll this with you today.
Lee, I mean, are we okay? Are we putting you in a bad position? You're okay
What's
with
the masonry?
that they're gonna be breaking up the masonry to create patterns
Yeah.
out of the brick.
Is it okay for us to make this recommendation?
It's unusual, but
But it's not.
Well, I mean. Politically, I hate to become architect. I
No,
mean,
but
that's
if the
your job.
applicant's all right,
Yeah.
this approach, we're all right.
Yeah.
I'll see y'all again too on other projects. Make sure it's right, trust me.
No, I mean, we want this to be good as well. So, I mean, that's our intent. We want this to be good.
Lee, you want to read our motion?
Thank you for bearing with us, yeah. So the motion from Mr. McKay is for approval with conditions, and Lee, I'll ask you to repeat them.
double hip roof. Operable windows with Juliet's. Breaking up the masonry. What was that?
With patterns, or how would you like to
Yeah,
describe it?
yeah,
Breaking up
yeah.
the masonry. with-
Breaking up the
Breaking.
elevation, the south elevation, the Cooper elevation, if that helps.
And then setting back the Cooper elevation.
And studying the setback.
Yeah.
48.
So 4 items.
4 items, thank you. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morrison. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. None opposed?
I think we ought to put in the motion. With conferral and agreement with the applicant that we're going with these conditions, so we have some record of why we're doing this a little bit unusual.
Noted, Mr. Morrison. We will make a note about compliance with the applicant on these conditions.
That'll be part of the minutes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really look forward to it.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, John, thanks for speaking up on this.